Dear Abby, I am the mother of a baby who is learning to feed himself. I am almost positive that Terry is left-handed because when I put the spoon in his right hand, he transfers it to the left. My husband says I should train Terry to be right-handed because everything is geared for right-handed people, and the boy will be handicapped if he's left-handed. Now my husband is forcing Terry to eat with his right hand. What do your experts say? Young mother, 1976. When I was a young boy, 7 or 8 years old I'd say, and many years before 1976, our family joined the Fort Carolyn Country Club in Jacksonville. It consisted of a restaurant and golf course and a family swimming pool, among other amenities. We all learned how to play golf, to some extent at least. Mom and Dad and we 4 kids. I vividly recall my first set of golf clubs because my father recommended that I learn to play right-handed. Now, my dad was not like the father in the Dear Abby letter. I was not in any way discouraged from using my left hand or rapped across the knuckles by my teachers, as was customary in my parents' time. My father's reasoning was simply this: there will be occasions when I travel and I might want to play golf but do not have my clubs. And when I do, I will find that it is terribly difficult to acquire left-handed clubs, whether I borrow or rent them. In fact, my father was correct. It isn't easy to this day to buy a standard set of left-handed clubs without special ordering them. So I don't blame my father. In fact, I thank him for forcing me out of my comfort level, for making me learn at least one thing for my almost useless right hand, and most of all, for providing me with a great excuse for being so lousy at golf. Jack Fincher wrote a book called Lefties: The Origins and Consequences of Being Left-Handed. And I noticed just this morning, I'm surprised he didn't make the book left-handed. He says in the book that handedness may be more a matter of sidedness. Hand, foot, eye, and body, inside and out. For instance, what if I told you we could determine your sidedness by studying your hair? Fincher describes a phenomenon called trichogyria or trichogyria. I had never heard of it either. The swirl of the hairs on your head, quote, which is basically clockwise in right-handers, counterclockwise in left. Here's another method. Can you flex, try it, a single finger without moving the others?
Yes.
Right-handers are better at it, says the book, but with their left hand. I did a little online research from rightleftrighwrong.com. Left-handedness is slightly more likely for men, 13%, versus women, 11%. Left-handedness is 2 times more likely among twins. I didn't know that. Left-handed parents are 2 times more likely to produce twin offspring. And Left-handers are twice as likely to have left-handed children. This from handresearch.com. Mensa claims that 20% of its members are left-handed, in spite of 10% in the population. Left-handed people live significantly shorter lives than right-handed. That I didn't know until yesterday. I'm going to chalk that up to the fact that we're daredevils. Stuttering and dyslexia are more common in left-handed people, but left-handed people can see better underwater. Alan Searleman, professor of psychology at St. Lawrence University in New York, studied the phenomenon of handedness for more than 30 years. He concluded that left-handers are more likely to have above 140 IQs and better vocabulary. But they are also more likely to be autistic. Lefties, he said, have poorer memories but are twice as good at problem-solving tasks. And Neil Friedman pointed out on his blog that left-handers are more intelligent, better looking, imaginative, and multi-talented than right-handers.
Did you write that yourself?
No, Neil Friedman did, and he said if you don't believe him, just ask any left-hander. Jack Fincher's book, Lefties, was originally titled Sinister People. He called it that for good reason. How many of us know that for ages throughout history, left-handedness was frowned upon and worse? In the fields of academia, medicine, philosophy, psychology, and especially religion, being left-handed was an ailment or a curse. The Latin word for left, in fact, is sinister. Its opposite, right, is dexter. What's that the root for? Dexterous, right. In French, the word is gauche, meaning awkward or clumsy. In Italian, mancino, crooked or maimed. To have two left feet is to be a clumsy dancer. A left-handed compliment is what? A criticism. I compare that to calling someone Indian giver. It's discriminatory. The Maori culture, Native Americans, Hindus, Russian Orthodox, the Celts, and Catholics, all of them and more include a right side bias. In culture after culture, the right denotes the good, true, lofty, upright, noble, sacred, virile, while the left denotes its opposite. Sociologist Robert Hertz argues that human hands are the symbols of all the fundamental dualisms underlying religious thought: good and evil, sacred and profane, the divine and the demonic. In Fincher's chapter, Is God Right-Handed?, he offers what he calls one unshakable fact: the Bible overwhelmingly favors one hand at the expense of the other. When all the moral goodies are handed out, he writes, the scriptures come down righteously hard on one side, while the other is what else? Left out. Jesus' teaching about the final judgment. He says, before God will be gathered all nations, and he will separate them one from another, and he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on his left. Then shall the king say to them on his right hand, Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you. Then shall he say unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels.
What's wrong with ghosts?
Penny Kim, yeah. Goat, greatest of all time.
Right.
Penny Kim in her online blog wrote, In Christianity, the right hand is mentioned positively 100 times in the Bible, while the left is mentioned only 25 times, all negative.
Wow.
Thankfully, south-paws no longer suffer intolerably from discrimination or persecution. We're doing quite fine, aside from the use of a few tools and gadgets. Power saws. I learned this from 30 years in carpentry work. In fact, eventually it became an advantage as I learned to be ambidextrous with tools, particularly the circular saw, with which I cut off the tip of one of my fingers, learning how to use. Fishing reels, bowling balls, guitars, scissors, can openers. Sure, I have a persistent stain on my little finger from plowing through the ink on my written page. I'm always assigned the dining chair on the left side so as not to clash elbows with those copious right-handers. And just try winding or setting a watch on your right hand. That's why I have a collection of 8 pocket watches. I find it fascinating that left-handers were ever the object of discrimination. Who would expect that something as benign as the hand with which one writes or eats would invite such wrath or condemnation? That makes about as much sense to me as judging someone by, say, the color of their skin, or by who they choose to love, for whom they vote, or from where they came, whether they are male or female. So let me share with you the musings of this right-brained lefty. What makes this a spiritual message? Why am I presenting this on Sunday morning? What is it to do with us today? Fincher reminds us that during the Middle Ages, the king's favorite sat on his right side, thus becoming his right-hand man. The same practice, he said, was extended to the physical layout of the pre-revolutionary French National Assembly, giving us a set of political labels and some would say attitudes that exist to this day. The nobles were government's right wing. The upstart capitalists of all people, its left wing. Now, every Unitarian Universalist congregation that I know of has in its embrace what some of us would lightheartedly and I hope lovingly refer to as its token Republicans, or otherwise contains members and friends who align themselves broadly across the continuum from east to west, from conservative to liberal, from left to right, from Christian to pagan to humanist to atheist. We do not separate our sheep from our goats, or our goats from our llamas, alpacas, and camels. We are a menagerie of brightly colored, oddly shaped, and multifarious souls. It is safe to suggest, however, even to the casual observer,
that we are a religiously liberal association. We lean to the left. Following the guidelines and the spirit of our principles, we consistently enact and carry out statements of conscience and study action issues on environmental justice, climate change, ethical eating, immigration reform, pro-choice, marriage equality, and all the major issues of our day. We are not unlike other faith traditions in our desire to shape public and private opinion, to sway the course of human events, and, quote, bend the arc of the moral universe toward justice. By the way, that quote is from UU minister Theodore Parker. Martin Luther King was quoted. But something is quite unique about us. We are nonconformists. We are those left-handed children standing up against the ruler, refusing to knuckle down and go right. We call ours a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, one in which we refuse to accept that there is only one path to understanding. Jerome Bruner called this unconventional approach the metaphor paid out by the left hand, a way that grows happy hunches and lucky guesses, the way of the poet and imagination. What is it that separates us from the pack when it comes to these ethical and social issues of justice, equity, and compassion? In the words of UU minister, the Reverend Dr. Thandeka, we love beyond belief. We came out of this Judeo-Christian tradition and we separated ourselves from the pack because we attempted to understand the difference between metaphor and fact, between symbol and truth, between the right and left hands of religion. In the 1800s, people quoted the Bible to justify slavery and oppose women's rights. Today, they are doing it to discriminate against our gay and lesbian friends and our immigrant neighbors and against us. Governor DeSantis just used $12 million of Florida taxpayer money to fly 2 plane loads of what he called possibly illegal aliens to the progressive state, in his words, of Massachusetts. That great Unitarian minister Theodore Parker called the literal interpretation of the Bible a form of idolatry and said you would love the Bible more if you did not worship it. When I was trained in reality therapy as a social worker and we were operating group treatment homes, we were taught that everyone is entitled to their story. Every child coming into our program was invited to tell their story to the group one time. I was abused, misunderstood, neglected, adopted, orphaned, misguided, mishandled by life. Okay. But that was only the beginning of treatment. More important than that was the question, what are we going to do about it? The story is our metaphor. It doesn't have to be our reality. The metaphors are the constructs, the framework of our lives upon which we build our realities. I have 2 family members who are black, adopted by my sister as very young children and raised in a white middle-class culture and family. Left-handers in a right-hand world. One of them struggles for identity and purpose, in and out of prison and trouble. The other is in graduate school at the University of Virginia, studying engineering. Same family, same mother, same support systems. We dearly love them both. One of them requires more energy. James Baldwin in The Fire Next Time said, "Love takes off the masks that we fear we cannot live without and know we cannot live within." I use the word love here, he said, not merely in the personal sense, but as a state of being or a state of grace. Not in the infantile American sense of being made happy, but in the tough and universal sense of quest and daring and growth. Do we label ourselves and others left-handed, gay, disabled, immigrant, homeless, sinister? Or do we create a reality, take control of our lives, improve upon the stories we have been given? I believe that's why we come here. We come to join a community, not of like-minded people, where everyone is right-handed, happy, successful, and fine, but a place where we are willing to help one another tell our stories, separate the metaphor from the reality, reshape our lives and our world for the better. Psychologist Jerry Levy said, "The one thing that we know from all the research on left-handedness is that humankind is polymorphous. We are crazy," she said, "if we try to push everybody through the same cookie mold. We are biologically meant to be diverse, and that diversity is helpful to us all. May we love beyond belief." Amen.